Hi, I'm John Calarco, Holistic Health and Performance Coach. In this video, I'm going to teach you the best way to build strength and movement. Unleash your power, achieve your potential. If you've ever trained for a long period of time and struggled to see the results in building your strength and conditioning that you felt you should have, or if you've had aches and pains and nagging injuries that have held you back from training, or maybe just from doing daily, basic activities that you should be able to do, in this video, I'm going to try to help you understand why, what may be holding you back, and what you may be missing in terms of addressing when it comes to optimizing your movement and performance. So the first thing we need to think about when it comes to optimizing human movement, performance, and then our strength and conditioning is the human brain and nervous system. The nervous system is the governing system of our body that governs all the other systems. Remember, the brain's primary purpose is survival and just keeping you alive. It's not necessarily to optimize your performance, all right? It's to keep you alive and navigating through your environment safely. Then the second purpose of the brain is movement, to navigate you through the environment, all right? So those two purposes work hand in hand, but again, oftentimes our movement will be compromised if there's fundamental deficits and dysfunctions in our nervous system that are related to just basic survival functions, and so therefore movement will be compromised. So when we think about addressing the nervous system in a holistic way, we think about the neural hierarchy, all right? So what the neural hierarchy is looking at the visual, vestibular, and proprioceptive systems, all right? So the visual system, of course, is your system of seeing, that the function of your eyes and your ability to see and see well, all right? And the visual system has a lot of different important functions. One thing that people don't understand about the visual system is that the eyes have 6 what we call extraocular muscles, all right? So just like your body has muscles that function and need to be trained and moved to perform well, and if you don't use it, you lose it. If you don't train a muscle, it gets weaker and doesn't function well. The same goes with your eye muscles, the 6 muscles that allow your eyes to move up, down, side to side, and even in diagonals and all around, all right? And then the other thing to understand about the eyes is that you have reflexes that go along with your eye function, okay? So for instance, when you look up with your eyes, it drives extension of the body, okay? It makes sense, right? When you look to the side or you rotate the eyes to the side, it drives rotation in that direction of the body, okay? So the eyes drive movement. Then also, there's really 4 kind of basic visual skills that we want to be able to have a fundamental, again, just baseline level of function within. The first one is visual resolution, right? Our ability to see clearly. Then it's our visual depth perception. You've probably heard that term before. Our ability to see what's far away and what's close up and to judge that, okay? Really important as we're going through the environment and going through just everyday activities. Then it's also important to understand your peripheral awareness, what's around you, what you can see in your peripheral vision. And then, of course, I kind of mentioned it with the eye muscles is eye movements, okay? The ability for the eyes themselves to move on their own. So again, you can see well as you navigate through your environment. Then going to the vestibular system, all right? Again, that's our inner ear system, all right? You have these structures in the inner ear, and what they do and how they function is, again, they allow you to sense where you are in space, especially when you're moving forward and back or up and down. The vestibular system is responsible for that. You may have heard that the vestibular system is important in your balance, and that's absolutely true. And it is the system that governs balance in the body and allows you to balance well, or if there's deficits, again, you'll struggle with your balance. Then there are important reflexes with the vestibular system as well, and they connect with the visual system, okay? So you have what's called your vestibulo-ocular reflexes, okay? That connection between the visual and vestibular systems that allow you to navigate your environment well, properly, and allow the nervous system to function well. That would be your vestibulo-ocular reflex, okay? Or the cancellation of that reflex. The vestibulo-ocular reflex, or VOR for short, is when you're keeping your eyes on a point and you're rotating your head, which you do, thousands and thousands of times a day, if not more. And then cancellation is where we don't keep the eyes on a point, we move the head and the eyes together, and we transition to another point. Again, really fundamental functions of the visual vestibular system that, again, if we're missing baseline levels of function there, it's going to hold back our movement because, again, this neural hierarchy is a hierarchy. The visual system, the vestibular system are the 2 most important systems to the nervous system to allow you to survive, again, first purpose of the brain, and then to move well, okay? And again, it's often almost completely overlooked especially in the fitness industry, we just think about the third system, which is the proprioceptive system, okay? That's our movement system, okay? Our musculoskeletal system, our muscles, our tendons and ligaments and joints that allow us to move through the environment physically with our physical body. Now, of course, it's really important to train that too. And the way we go about addressing the proprioceptive system and everything it's made up of is first developing the fundamental levels of mobility necessary. All right, now that often is really important to also connect with breathing, because our breathing drives a lot of movement. And if we breathe poorly, generally our posture is poor. I've spoken about this in previous videos on the channel with breathing exercise videos I've demonstrated. When we breathe poorly and we over breathe through the accessory muscles up in the upper chest and neck, we create this poor postural position, and that's going to limit our movement and mobility. All right. Also, if we're not able to breathe deep through the diaphragm and relax through the nervous system, our nervous system is not going to allow us to open up the range of motions that we need. If we're stress breathing, we're going to be tight. If we're stress breathing up in the chest and neck, we're going to be locked up. So the first order of importance when it comes to developing the proprioceptive system is developing our breathing and then our mobility. Again, our ability to move through full ranges of motion, okay, through our joints based on the activities that we need to be able to move through range of motions. Doesn't mean you need extreme ranges of motion, if you don't require that for your sport or whatever it is, but it does mean that you need a baseline level of it to prevent injury, to have as good of posture as possible, and to do the daily activities that you need to do. So we think about developing the breathing and mobility. Then we progress on to building our stability, okay? That's our fundamental motor control, our movement control. Now, through those range of motions, let's say we did some good mobility exercise, some good breathing, we've achieved new range of motions. Now we need to stack some stability. We need to train the stabilizing muscles of the body to control movement through that new range of motion that we've achieved. Then we flow into developing strength on top of all that. And that's what really cements those ideal movement patterns into our nervous system and into our ability to perform them. All right. When we talk about strength, that means that we're just essentially adding resistance. We're adding load to the patterns that we develop mobility and stability within. All right. Then once we develop strength, it doesn't just stop there, especially if you're playing a sport. You're doing any type of dynamic activities. You're playing, tennis, or you're playing basketball or anything like that. We then need to take that strength and we need to apply it dynamically. So that's plyometrics, right? Plyometrics is essentially leveraging the speed mechanics of your body, the stretch shortening cycle, which is the quick reflex of your tendons to quickly lengthen and then shorten to explode you like a spring into and out of positions. All right, so we take the strength and then we develop the dynamic ability to move with speed through those positions and through those, again, exercise, postures and positions that we need for our sport or for whatever it is that we're doing. Then finally, to really solidify it all, we build conditioning on top of that great base, all right? Conditioning is essentially just our ability to move statically in a strength setting or dynamically in a plyometric setting, but mostly in an active dynamic plyometric setting to move into the right positions and postures and not lose our technique, right? You may have heard that it's more common to get injured when you're tired. And that's absolutely true because you lose that quality of movement that you may have when you're fresh and you're just doing strength or just plyometric work where you're getting a lot of rest, you're not getting that fatigue. All right, so that's really the flow of how we go through. Again, starts from the neural hierarchy there, and then we flow into, from that visual vestibular system to the proprioceptive movement system. And then within the movement system, we have this flow all the way through from mobility and breathing to stability, to strength, to plyometric and dynamic ability, and then conditioning. All right, so we have that flow that goes through and allows us to really approach movement in a holistic way. Now, what that's going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to, as we go through building that flow in the proprioceptive system, it's going to allow us to perform the 7 fundamental human movement patterns with the right levels of that mobility, stability, and strength that we need to perform them, okay? So I'm going to walk you through just a little example of your vision and your vestibular system and how that impacts your movement. So we're going to use the hip hinge movement pattern, okay, as an example. So the hip hinge movement pattern is my feet double leg and single leg, right? Because we can do things on 2 legs and 1 leg, all right, when we're performing and training. Now the hip hinge is just simply means we're bringing our hips back, okay, like we're hinging them, okay, back to the wall behind us with a slight knee bend or not, or maybe more of a knee bend if we need to, lift something up. So essentially the hip hinge pattern is like bending over, okay? So when we think about developing the hip hinge pattern, double leg, and even single leg, okay, the first thing that we need to do, if we can't see well, the brain is going to perceive that any type of movement is more of a threat. So it may restrict your range of motion. It may restrict your ability to move in that position. Okay? Or maybe you have trouble focusing on one point and your eyes are moving all over. That's going to challenge your balance, okay, as you're going maybe in the single leg variation of the hip hinge. Then of course, our balance, right? We want to be able to get our weight where we want it when we're doing the double leg hinge, okay? So that's going to be our vestibular system sensing and the proprioceptive system. Again, these systems work all together and integrate. That's going to be your vestibular system gauging where you are in space and helping you stay balanced. Then especially say if you're doing the single leg hip hinge or, single leg RDL type movement pattern, all right, we really need our vestibular system to function well to gauge our balance there. All right, then we flow from the visual vestibular system into our movement, all right, mobility and breathing. Okay, so the first thing that we'll often address for the hip hinge pattern is just fundamental hip mobility, right? All right, making sure we can breathe well while we're going through those positions, maybe doing some just breathing specific exercises to just improve our general breathing that we can carry over into drills like, hamstring mobility drills, hip flexor mobility drills. Okay, I've shown you in detail how to do these exercises previously on the channel, opening up our hip flexors, working on our hip rotation. I've shown you the 90-90 hip mobility in the past, going into and out of those positions to work on the rotation of the hips. So once you get a fundamental level of hip mobility, all right, then we're going to work on stability through those patterns. So we can do various exercises on the ground to build the stability in those patterns. Just as a quick example here is we're just going to build the hip hinge pattern. We're going to practice, maybe we're putting a stick on our back to maintain a neutral spine as we go through and train our movement control, our stability through the hip hinge pattern. If we're doing the single leg one, again, it's even more challenging. We're going single leg. We have to really then balance and really build the stabilizing muscles in the feet, the ankles, the hips, the core. All right, so you can see how we flow from that flow going through our mobility then to stability. All right, once we've built some stability in that range of motion, it's time to add load and resistance, okay? Then we're gonna go into resistance training. We're gonna add weight, okay? We're gonna add that strength challenge, that force production challenge. We're trying to now develop force production through the bigger muscles of our body, okay? After we built those stabilizers to stabilize for the big muscles of the body. All right, then finally, from there, we're gonna do dynamic activities, plyometrics, to take that strength and apply it with speed, okay? So that we can not only just move with speed when we're doing our activities, but also to decelerate properly and prevent injuries, okay? Doing plyometrics is not just about being able to, say, explode out in a single leg jump, all right, in the hip hinge pattern again, or a double leg, broad jump, right? When we're jogging our hips back, we're trying to jump out for distance. It's also about being able to control our landings, decelerate, not just accelerate and drive out, okay? Then finally, the conditioning aspect is really just taking all the different movement patterns I just demonstrated in the hip hinge pattern and then applying it and adding some volume, okay, of work, of doing reps over and over again, maybe still having some light resistance as well, and then building the conditioning, the endurance level to be able to still maintain high quality movement while we get fatigued, okay, through those different patterns, our RDLs, our single leg jumping, our change of direction exercises, all right? So that's an example with the hip hinge pattern, how we flow all the way through these different systems and the neural hierarchy to the different functional kind of progressions through movement, all right, in the hip hinge pattern. Now, the last thing that I want to leave you with on this is that when we're going through the hip hinge pattern is really like the foundation to all of our movement patterns in the lower body. So you can apply this flow to even, once we develop the hip hinge pattern, then we're doing our squats or we're doing our squat jump, right? It starts with a hip hinge back and then we're just bending the knees, okay? So it flows from there. That's why I use the hip hinge example for you here so we could, think about how not just the foundations of movement, but the foundations of the fundamental human movement patterns, which in the lower body is the hip hinge pattern. All right, so if you have any questions below on this, drop them in the comments below. Let me know if there's anything I can help you with further on this in the comments below. And then drop a like on this video if this was helpful for you. Maybe this did help you identify some things that you may be missing that you need to work on in your training. And of course, I have many more videos coming on stability training, strength training. Last month, I gave you a lot of trainings on mobility. That was the theme and the focus of the month. So make sure you go check those out. I'll link them in the description below and add them to the video. And then, hey, if you want help developing a holistic, individualized program for yourself. Maybe you've had some of these struggles and these limiting factors, before, and you don't know how to address them. Then click the link in the description to schedule a free success session with me, and I can learn more about your goals, the struggles that you've had, the things that may be holding you back. And hey, if I feel like I can help you and my program is a great fit for you, we can develop a holistic, individualized program for you and address these factors in a holistic way. So if that is of interest, the link is in the description below. And until next time, unleash your power, achieve your potential.